Good morning. My name is Grace Garland, and I am currently a Dalton State student teacher candidate at Donville Elementary in Miss Kennedy's first grade class. And today I'm going to be presenting my mentor teacher interview. So before I get started, I wanted to introduce my mentor teacher and really explain why I take all of her answers into consideration and why they mean so much to me, and I really want to apply a lot of what she said into my classroom. So my mentor teacher is Mrs. Amanda Kennedy, and she has 15 years of elementary teaching experience. She's taught first and third grade, and all 15 years have been done at Donville Elementary. So she's really built a community there, and it's very easy to see the friends, and honestly, she would probably call it her family at that elementary school. What I love most about Miss Kennedy, besides just watching her teach, is she is always open for a conversation, an open conversation. And she is constantly giving me good instruction and teaching me new techniques and new classroom management strategies that I'll be able to add into my future classroom one day. So the first thing that we discussed in our interview is the philosophies of classroom management in her class. And the first thing that she talked about was pulling cards. And that is really how she does most of the philosophies for behavior in her classroom management. Pulling cards is each student has their number. She does not use names on their cards. She just uses their number. On what she has are little paw prints that have Velcro on the back of it that are stuck to her cabinet. And then beside them are larger paw prints that are different colors. So purple and then green, blue, yellow, and red. And what she likes the most about it is that boys and girls can go up or they can go down. So they always start on green, and they have the opportunity to gain a paw print and be on purple, which is the highest and the best, or they go down if their behavior is not as the desired behavior that it needs to be in class. And I was a little skeptical about using the pulling cards, but earlier this week we got to see a little boy in the class that really struggles with dealing with frustration when it comes to certain topics like writing, and he had the best writing class time that he's had so far Monday, and he got to go up to purple, and he was so excited. So I really liked that the whole class really got to enjoy that he got to move up to purple, and he was so excited about it. And that is the main behavior management that Miss Kennedy uses. But she also says that sometimes you don't have to actually physically move the card. You can just say in your head, okay, you're on yellow in my head, but don't forget, if you act better and you start doing what you're supposed to, you can move back up to green. So she does that a lot of times, and I've seen her do that a lot, and that really gets the kids like, oh, I need to act better. Because, again, they're really young, and they want to impress their teacher as much as they can. The next philosophy that she talked about, and we've even talked about in class a lot, is meeting the basic needs of her kids. She said that sometimes kids come in and they've barely slept. Maybe they didn't get a meal the night before. They don't smell very good, and like their basic needs just have not been met. And that is always her first priority. She says that every child has a different environmental situation, and you have to treat every child as such. So she is a student that comes in that has some family difficulties and doesn't always get a lot of sleep at night. So she will let that student take a nap in class every once in a while because that kid can't function if they haven't gotten sleep. So that's one way that she really helps our students get their basic needs. And another way is she just shows them a lot of emotional love because a lot of those kids don't get it. And the last philosophy that she uses is rewards and consequences. And the pulling cards is a very good example of that. And that was just an observation of mine that I've seen her rewards and consequences. So the next thing that we talked about in the interview, which kind of fed from the philosophies, is her classroom management plan. So how does she use those philosophies in her classroom management plan? And she said that every class has general rules, the be respectful and be kind and don't lie to the teacher, things like that. But she also said that rules can differ for every kid. And this goes back to that every child has different environmental situations. And I put it in quotes because this was something that I really wanted to remember that she said. She said, equal isn't always fair. So you want to be as fair in your class as you possibly can, but that may not mean that it's as equal as everyone would like. So you have some students, it's very easy for them to follow general rules. It's very easy for them to do that. They've got lots of support at home. They have a wonderful environment. And then she said that there are a lot of kids that come in that don't have that. And it's not fair for you to automatically expect the same thing out of them, the same behavior out of them that you would expect from a child that does have that wonderful environment, that very supportive environment. That's just not fair. It might be equal, but it's not fair for those kids. And she was saying that, like, if you've got kids up here and you've got kids down here and you expect the exact same thing out of them, that doesn't make any sense. The kid down here is going to constantly feel like they're failing. And I was like, wow, you're right, equal isn't always fair. The next thing she said about classroom management plan is to slowly work up to procedures. Don't come in on the first day of school expecting that your students are going to understand every procedure exactly how you want it, because you're just going to feel like a failure at the end of the day. She said that, and I loved this, on the first day of school, your main priority is to make sure those kids are fed, alive by the end of the day, and able to make it home. If you got those three things, she was like, you have accomplished the first day of school. So she really put an emphasis on just slowly work up to those procedures and don't think you're a failure if they don't understand it the first time. The next thing we talked about in her classroom management plan was, do you use, do y'all have PBIS as a school? What do you do for rewards? And what do you do for communications? So the first part of that is the reward. And their school has ROAR, which stands for be responsible, on task, always kind, and respectful. And she said they really try to implement that into class, and I've seen her do this, where they'll talk about, are we being respectful? What does respectfulness look like? Are we being responsible? Are we on task? Are we being kind right now? And they say that every single morning, and they really try to implement that into their kids, and they see that ROAR all around the school. And what that feeds into, and she said this is normal. In a normal year, this is what they would do for PBIS, but of course this year is a little different. Normally, they would have a 9-week ROAR party. So for the kids that stayed in the green, or maybe was on yellow a little bit of the time, but was mainly on green and really followed the ROAR rules, would get to have a ROAR party where maybe they have pizza, or maybe they have ice cream, or maybe they just get some candy, and they get rewarded for having the good behavior all throughout the year, which I really loved. Again, she said that was on a normal year, but this year is a little bit different. And then we talked about communication, and I have heard her, she talks about this every single day I'm in her classroom. She loves Remind. Remind is her main way that she communicates with parents, and she is texting them like all throughout the day, all different parents. Yesterday, she texted 2 little boys' parents because one had gotten on purple and one was doing so much better in class, and those parents just love getting those text messages from students that may often have a lot of trouble. Just a text of encouragement, and she sends them all the time. But she also uses Remind for parents to communicate with her about maybe the students are doing a different way home that day, or maybe they just had a rough night and the teacher needs to know that so they can understand why there's behavior problems that day. And again, I've got something in quotes because I really wanted to remember this, and it says, always tell parents a positive along with your negative. And she said that, and I was like, wow, that really makes sense. So she was telling me that one of the children in her classroom has focusing issues, and she might text the mom, hey, he had a lot of trouble today focusing, but I just want to let you know that his writing was so much better today than it was yesterday. So she said, always talk about a positive when you're giving a negative, because you don't want those parents to just think that their kids aren't doing good in class, because they're not. And you don't always want to focus on the negatives. And I really liked that piece of advice. So the next thing that we talked about was, how do you deal with demanding behavior in the classroom? And she does have some students in her classroom that do have demanding behavior. They're sweet kids, but they don't really know how to handle their emotions yet. And she said to always be consistent with discipline. So if you say you're going to do something, you need to do it. They don't need to see that you're just putting on a front or that you're not going to follow through. She said always be consistent. And then she told me a story about never losing your cool. And she said that one day her principal had come in and she had a student one year that was just so emotionally frustrated that he was yelling at her in her face, screaming at her, and she just had a blank face on. And she said, you don't ever need to let your students see you lose your cool, because then they're going to know how far they can push you to get the reaction out of you that they want. And I really liked that. And the next thing that she mentioned was use what they want or what they work for to use as disciplines or consequences. So if they work for getting a piece of candy at the end of it, if they do something wrong, that reward gets taken away. That's their consequence. And she said just use what they want and what they work for as your consequences. Make it, personalize it for students if you have to, if you've got really demanding behavior. So that's the end of my mentor teacher interview, and I just kind of wanted to wrap up with some of the things that I really took away from this. I was so appreciative of her for letting me talk her ears off and ask her all of these questions. What I really got from this is, one, always make sure your students' basic needs are met, because teaching is important, but loving them and caring for them and making sure that they're in an environment that they want to be in is even more important. Number two, again, equal isn't always fair when it comes to discipline, and that's something that you have to realize as a student or as a teacher. And yeah, so that's what I really took away from this, and I was very thankful that she sat down and shared some of her wisdom with me. So thank you for listening. I really appreciate it, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.